His white moonlight had returned, and I decided to sell that diamond ring. The afternoon sunlight slanted through the floor-to-ceiling window, dancing on my slightly pale fingertips, refracting fragmented yet cold light. The ring had only been picked up last week, with a customization period of up to 6 months, but now it seemed like an untimely joke. On the inner wall of the platinum band, the carefully engraved letters E and L were intertwined inseparably. E stood for Ethan, L for me, Lynn. My phone screen lit up with a local financial news alert. The accompanying picture was of the airport VIP lounge. Ethan, dressed in a sharp black coat, had a slender woman leaning against him. Even with sunglasses on, I recognized her. It was Clara, the white moonlight that Ethan had cherished in his heart for years, a woman whose photos had faded with age. The title was striking: Shin Group heir returns with mysterious girlfriend, wedding bells rumored. It felt as if my chest was being slowly struck by a blunt object, causing a dull ache. So, his so-called urgent business was to pick her up. So, his recent hesitations and frequent business trips all had the most reasonable explanation. I calmly closed the notification, opened my contacts, and found the number labeled Manager Zhou. When the call connected, my voice showed no fluctuation. Manager Zhou, hello, this is Lynn. Yes, that star ring, I want to entrust you to sell it as soon as possible, the price is negotiable. After hanging up, I stood up and began packing my luggage. My movements were unhurried, as if preparing for an ordinary short trip. In the wardrobe, his suits hung alongside my dresses, my skincare products occupied most of the bathroom vanity, and in the study, there were my unfinished leisure books and his desk with unfinished design drafts spread out. This apartment where we had lived together for 3 years was filled with traces of my life everywhere. Now, it was time to return everything to its original owner, restoring it to its proper state of waiting for the true female owner. I only took away my own belongings, along with the small suitcase I had when I first moved in. As for everything related to Ethan, his clothes, watches, the limited edition models he collected, even the notes he casually wrote for me that I stuck on the fridge, I carefully placed them back in their original positions. Finally, my gaze fell on the bedside table. On it was a slightly worn photo frame, with a picture of 14 or 15-year-old me and Ethan under the crooked neck locust tree in our hometown, hooking fingers and laughing carefree. That was the starting point of our 25-year agreement. I reached out, my fingertips gently brushing over the youthful Ethan's spirited brows and eyes in the photo, then I placed the frame face down on the table. Picking up my phone, I sent Ethan a message on Facebook, in a tone as bland as discussing the weather. Ethan, I'm leaving. The keys are on the shoe cabinet. Wishing you and her happiness. Without questioning, without complaining, not even giving him a chance to reply, I directly blocked all his contact methods. As I dragged my suitcase out of the apartment building, the evening wind carried a hint of coolness. I didn't look back, heading straight to the waiting ride-hailing car. The city lights were just coming on, colorful streams passing over my calm, expressionless face. Ethan, look, without you, I can still be very dignified. Ethan saw my message during a break in the project negotiation meeting. The moment the phone screen lit up, he had just finished a round of intense debate, loosening his tie, with lingering fatigue and sharpness between his brows. His gaze touched that brief message, his pupils constricting sharply, instantly blocking out all surrounding noise. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor with a piercing sound, drawing astonished looks from everyone in the meeting room. General Manager Ethan? Sorry, urgent family matter, Mr. Leo will handle the follow-up details. He tossed out this sentence, not even having time to grab his coat from the chair back, almost rushing out of the meeting room. Speeding home all the way, he couldn't remember how many red lights he ran. His mind repeatedly replayed that message, I'm leaving. Wishing you and her happiness. Happiness with whom? Which her? His heart felt as if gripped tightly by an invisible hand, panic like ice water instantly soaking his limbs. He pushed open the apartment door forcefully, the sensor light at the entrance lighting up in response, illuminating an excessively empty space. On the shoe cabinet, her bunch of keys lay alone. In the air, that faint orange blossom scent belonging to me, which he was familiar with, seemed to be dissipating bit by bit. Ethan rushed into the bedroom. The wardrobe was half empty, my bottles and jars on the vanity were gone, and on the bedside table, the photo frame I treasured was placed face down. He picked it up. In the photo, the two silly teenagers still laughed glaringly. With trembling hands, he dialed my number. The receiver transmitted a cold system prompt: "The number you have dialed is powered off." The message sent on Facebook showed only a bright red exclamation mark. I had really left. Not throwing a tantrum, not waiting for him to coax me, but completely withdrawing from his world, Ethan's world. Ethan slumped onto the bed, hands inserted into his hair, feeling for the first time an overwhelming bewilderment and helplessness. Clara? Was it because of Clara? Ethan suddenly remembered that he had indeed gone to pick her up yesterday, because the Sue and Shin families were old acquaintances. His father personally called him to insist he go, and he couldn't refuse. When Clara twisted her ankle exiting the airport, he instinctively supported her. Could it be that Lynn saw it? But what kind of bullshit reason was that? We had been together for 3 years, over 1,000 days and nights. Could it not outweigh a groundless photo? Anger and grievance intertwined and surged up, but more so was a fear that penetrated to the bone. Ethan recalled the day I decided to come with him to make a living in the northern city. I looked up, eyes sparkling, saying, "Ethan, I'm not afraid of hardship, I'm just afraid you won't want me." How did Ethan respond then? He seemed to have ruffled her hair and laughed at me for being silly. But now, the one who didn't want the other seemed to be me. I rented a 1-bedroom in an old neighborhood in the northern city and settled down temporarily. I didn't tell any acquaintances my new address, including those occasional contacts from my hometown. I needed time and space to lick my wounds and replan a life without Ethan. I quickly found a job at a small but pleasant cultural creative company, responsible for content planning. Life seemed to snap back on track, calm, regular, even excessively quiet. Occasionally, I would hear sporadic news about Ethan from mutual friends. They said he had changed into a different person, working even more frantically, with a much more irritable temper. At a gathering, when someone inadvertently mentioned my name, he smashed a glass on the spot. I just listened faintly, without comment. Did it hurt? Perhaps a little, but more so was a detached numbness. I began learning to enjoy solitary time, making simple dinners for myself after work, watching a movie on weekends, or spending a whole day at the library. I even enrolled in a sketching class to fulfill a childhood dream. However, in countless late nights, I would still wake from bizarre dreams. In the dreams, sometimes it was the long lane in our hometown scented with locust flowers, with teenage Ethan riding a bike carrying me, the bell ringing crisply. Sometimes it was the cold winter nights in the northern city, us squeezed in a tiny rental room, sharing a bowl of instant noodles, yet laughing with utmost satisfaction. Sometimes, it was that airport photo, Ethan's gaze toward Clara so gentle it suffocated me. I knew forgetting took time. I set a goal for myself: 1 year, at most 1 year, I must uproot Ethan from my heart completely. However, fate seemed unwilling to grant me this peaceful healing period. One afternoon, while I was revising a proposal at the company, the front desk notified me someone was looking for me. I walked to the reception area and saw the person I least wanted to see, Clara. Clara was even more beautiful than in the photos, with a gentle temperament, her designer clothes outlining her superior figure. She looked at me, smiled slightly, with a condescending pity. "Miss Lynn, shall we talk?" In the coffee shop downstairs from the company, the environment was serene. Clara gently stirred her latte, her tone soft, yet every word she uttered was like a poisoned needle. "Miss Lynn, I know my appearance may have caused some misunderstandings between you and Ethan. I'm sorry." She lifted her eyes, her gaze so sincere it was faultless. "But between Ethan and me, our matters are complicated. It's not what you think." I gripped the water cup in my hand, fingertips turning white, yet maintaining calm on my face. "Miss Clara, I think you've misunderstood. Ethan and I have already broken up. Whatever is between you two is none of my concern." Clara smiled, that smile carrying a knowing pity. "Is that so? But Ethan is in great pain. He is a person who values loyalty, especially to past people and matters. We grew up together, some feelings are incomprehensible to outsiders. I paused, and she brought up again, like that locked drawer in his study, filled with things from our youth. He probably never showed it to you, right? My heart sank sharply. I knew about that drawer. Ethan had said it contained some old items, not important, and he didn't know where the key was. I had never cared about it, even forgetting its existence later. So, what was locked inside was his youth with Clara. Clara observed my expression and gently delivered the final blow. Miss Lynn, you're a good girl, deserving of better. Ethan, perhaps he's just accustomed to having you around. But habit, after all, is not love. What he needs is someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with him at the pinnacle, someone who understands his ambitions and pressures. And these, I think I can give him better. Clara's words were like a precise key, opening Pandora's box, releasing not hope, but 3 years of accumulated, dust-like self-doubt. On the subway ride back, the advertising billboards outside the window streamed with colors, blurring into a cold river of light. Every word of Clara swirled and amplified in my mind, seamlessly connecting with countless details from the past 3 years. That drawer he always refused to let me touch. The number in his phone labeled row that he almost never contacted. His silent silhouette occasionally smoking by the window late at night. His parents' polite yet distant attitude every time they saw me. Even the expensive gifts he gave me, were they mixed with some compensatory psychology? Compensating for the guilt of not being able to give true heart. So, the so-called childhood sweethearts, the so-called 25-year agreement, from beginning to end, was just my solitary struggle like a trapped beast. I was like an intruder, clumsily playing a dispensable supporting role in his and Clara's story, arrogantly adding lines, thinking I could wait for a happy ending. My heart felt as if torn open with a big gash, cold wind whistling in. The dignity and calm I had been forcing before completely crumbled under Clara's heart-to-heart analysis. I felt an unprecedented fatigue and embarrassment. So, not only had I lost the present, but even those past beautiful memories I thought were real might have been my one-sided wishful thinking. Ethan's days were equally tough. He mobilized all conceivable connections to find me, but it was like a stone sinking into the sea. I had vanished like evaporated from the world, completely disappearing in this vast metropolis of the northern city. He went to every place I might go, asked all their mutual acquaintances, but got only head shakes. After the anger, came a long, heart-devouring panic and regret. For the first time, he realized so clearly that it was no longer just a youthful promise or habitual companionship. I was air, water, unnoticeable usually, but once lost, it was suffocating pain. He recalled when I first came to the northern city, with an ordinary education, repeatedly hitting walls and job hunting, yet never complaining to him, always smiling and saying it's okay, I'll look again. Recalling our poorest times, when I secretly ate steamed buns and pickled vegetables for half a month, yet used the saved money to buy him the mechanical keyboard he had been longing for. Recalling how I stayed up late to organize materials for him, silently prepared hangover soup after his social engagements, and at every frantic project node, soothed his anxiety with my unique, somewhat clumsy gentleness. In these 3 years, he was busy starting his business, establishing himself in this city, taking for granted my contributions and companionship, yet stingy in giving her enough sense of security. He thought our emotional foundation was solid, needing no deliberate maintenance. He even had never formally, solemnly proposed to me. That star diamond ring was less a proposal ring than a boast of his own achievements. Look, Ethan, you finally have the ability to give your childhood sweetheart the best. Yet he forgot to ask if this was what I wanted. Clara had approached him several times, hinting in her words at the resources and support the Sue family could bring to the Shin group. For the first time, Ethan felt genuine annoyance toward this old family friend sister he grew up with. He clearly told Clara, Clara, between us there is only family friendship, nothing else. My fiancé is only Lynn. He moved out of that apartment carrying too many memories and returned to living in a hotel. He began working frantically, trying to numb himself with fatigue, but every late night, the emptiness of losing me would flood over him like a tide. By chance, he heard a friend mention seeming to have seen me in a creative park in the west of the city. Ethan, as if grasping a lifesaver, immediately cancelled all arrangements and drove to that park. He wandered aimlessly inside for a whole day, finding nothing. Just as he was about to give up, he spotted a familiar silhouette in the window of a small bookstore near the park. I had slimmed down a bit, wearing a simple cotton dress, tiptoeing to reach a book on the top shelf. At that moment, Ethan's heart nearly jumped out of his chest. He almost rushed over, but abruptly stopped just as his hand was about to touch me. What should he say? Sorry? I was wrong? Please come back? These pale words seemed ridiculous even to himself. I seemed to sense the movement behind me and turned around. Seeing it was him, a highly complex emotion flashed across my face, surprise, panic, then settling into a dead calm. Mr. Ethan, what a coincidence. I nodded distantly, took the selected book, turned to the cashier to pay, without glancing at him again. Ethan froze in place, the Lynn stuck in his throat ultimately dissipated silently in the warm air of the bookstore. The way I looked at him was like looking at a stranger. He knew he had lost me. And it might be hard to get me back. Time slipped unhurriedly into early autumn. My life gradually filled with new work content and social circles. A niche cultural creative project I was responsible for unexpectedly received good market response, leading to me being valued at the company, promoted, and given a raise. I began learning to truly enjoy the sense of achievement from work. Weekends were no longer just staying home, but going hiking or viewing exhibitions with colleagues and friends. I deliberately blocked all news about Ethan, packing that relationship along with the unsent diamond ring, sealing them away in a corner of memory, no longer touching them easily. Just as I thought life had finally entered a new track, an unexpected invitation broke the calm. The inviter was a highly influential fashion media group in the northern city. They were planning a large-scale national-style cultural creative exhibition, taking interest in my company's recently renowned series of products, hoping for deep cooperation, with me as the main contact person. This was undoubtedly an excellent opportunity for me and my small company. The boss was ecstatic and entrusted the project entirely to me. The project kickoff meeting was arranged in the top-floor conference room of the media group. I arrived early with my assistant, took a deep breath, telling myself to be professional. This was just an ordinary business cooperation. The conference room door was pushed open. I walked in with a proper smile, but when my gaze met the person in the main seat, the smile instantly froze on my face. Sitting in the main seat was not the expected project director, but Ethan. He was wearing a finely tailored dark gray suit, slimmer than a few months ago, with sharper jawlines, and an increasingly steady and stern aura. At this moment, he was looking up at me, his gaze deep, carrying a complex emotion I couldn't understand. The project director enthusiastically introduced, Manager Lynn, this is our group's specially invited strategic advisor, General Manager Ethan. General Manager Ethan is a top expert in brand strategy and cross-border marketing. It's our honor to have his guidance on this project. Ethan stood up, across the long conference table, extending his hand to me, in a standard business tone without any fluctuation. Manager Lynn, I've long admired you. Hoping for a pleasant cooperation. I looked at that hand with distinct knuckles, which had held and embraced me countless times, now like an invisible chasm between us. I hesitated for a second, but ultimately extended my hand, giving a light grip. The instant our fingertips touched, it seemed a faint current surged through. I quickly withdrew my hand, lowered my eyes to hide the ripples in them, trying to make my voice sound steady and natural. General Manager Ethan, pleased to meet you. Looking forward to your guidance. The meeting proceeded in an atmosphere that seemed normal but was actually undercurrents surging. Ethan spoke little, but each time he did, it hit the mark, demonstrating strong professional ability and insight. I forced myself to concentrate, focusing on the project itself, ignoring that gaze occasionally falling on me, carrying scrutiny and inquiry. I didn't understand why Ethan was here. With his current status and position, why would he come to advise on such a specific exhibition project? Was it coincidence, or deliberate? After the meeting, as I packed up to leave, Ethan's voice sounded behind me. "Manager Lynn, please stay. Regarding the initial market research data, there are a few details I'd like to confirm with you again." The others tactfully left, leaving only us two in the conference room. The air instantly became thin and tense. I turned around, with a standard professional smile. "Please speak, General Manager Ethan." But Ethan didn't look at the files. Instead, he walked up to me, close enough that I could smell the familiar, clear cedar scent on him. He looked down at me, his voice low with a barely noticeable hoarseness. "Lynn, let's talk." "General Manager Ethan, it's work time now. If you have no business to discuss, I'll excuse myself first." I stepped back, creating distance, my tone distant. "Business?" Ethan tugged at the corner of his mouth, revealing a bitter smile. "Fine, let's talk business. This project, I voluntarily requested to join." My heart skipped a beat. I looked up at him. "I know you're avoiding me." Ethan's gaze locked onto me tightly, not allowing escape. "But Lynn, some things can't be solved by avoiding. Give me a chance, listen to my explanation." "Explain what?" I suppressed the sourness in my heart, trying to make my voice sound indifferent. "Explain your childhood sweetheart feelings with Miss Clara? Or explain that locked drawer of yours?" "Ethan, these are all in the past, I'm not interested in knowing." "That's not true." Ethan interrupted urgently, his tone carrying suppressed pain. "Lynn, what did Clara say to you? In that drawer?" "General Manager Ethan." I raised my voice, interrupting him. "Your private matters really have nothing to do with me. We are now just in a cooperative relationship, please maintain professionalism." After saying that, I no longer looked at him, picked up my things, and left the conference room without looking back. In the following days, due to the project cooperation, Ethan and I inevitably had a lot of contact. Ethan adhered to the professional boundaries. All exchanges revolved around work, efficient, precise, without any overstepping words or actions. He even proposed several highly constructive plans that greatly benefited the entire project team. I had to admit that Ethan at work was remarkably charismatic. His thinking was meticulous, his vision unique, and his grasp of the market and user psychology terrifyingly accurate. Working with him was highly stressful, yet rewarding. But the more contact, the more chaotic my heart became. I found myself still unconsciously attracted to his focus and talent, still having my heartbeat disorder when he occasionally showed a youthful air similar to my memories. I hated this unpromising self, clearly determined to let go, yet still easily stirred by him. To advance the project, the team decided on a 3-day closed brainstorming session, located at a resort villa in the suburbs. I wanted to find an excuse to decline, but the boss had high hopes for this project, and as the person in charge, I couldn't find a suitable reason to be absent. The first day of the closed discussion had a normal atmosphere. By the second evening, during the team dinner, some wine was inevitably drunk. The atmosphere livened up, and someone started heckling for Ethan to talk about his entrepreneurial story. Ethan couldn't refuse and said a few simple words. Perhaps due to the alcohol, or the atmosphere, as he spoke, his gaze involuntarily drifted to me sitting in the corner, quietly eating. Actually, my hardest time wasn't when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy, nor when suppressed by competitors. His voice lowered, with a barely noticeable choke. It was when I realized that despite striving to give her the best of everything, I had lost my most precious treasure. The dining table instantly quieted, everyone realized something, their gazes patrolling between Ethan and me. My hand holding the chopsticks trembled slightly. I lowered my head, not daring to look at him. Ethan tilted his head back and downed the wine in his cup, as if mustering courage, looked at me, and said clearly word by word, "Lynn, I know I was wrong. Terribly wrong. I shouldn't have ignored your feelings, shouldn't have taken your goodness to me for granted, and even more shouldn't have let those irrelevant people and matters hurt you. That drawer," he took a deep breath, "what's locked inside isn't any memories with Clara. It's the little notes you secretly slipped into my school bag and textbooks from elementary school to now, and that ugly scarf you gave me the first time that I disliked for being ugly and refused to wear, and that contract paper for our 25-year agreement, which you wrote with a fountain pen back then, I've kept it all along. I suddenly lifted my head, looking at him in disbelief. I went to pick up Clara out of obligation to family friendship and family pressure, nothing more. I smashed the glass not because others mentioned you, but because I hated myself for driving away the person I love most. Ethan's eyes reddened slightly. Lynn, these 3 months, I've regretted every day. I searched all over the northern city, went to every place you might be. There wasn't a day I didn't miss you. The entire private room was silent, everyone held their breath. My tears rolled down without warning. I had imagined countless confrontation scenes, thought of his explanations, even his attempts to salvage, but never imagined he would, in this setting, in this way, dissect his heart, laying out those tiny secrets belonging to us that I thought he had long forgotten, one by one in front of everyone. Those notes, that scarf, that childish contract, he had kept them all? And locked them away? Ethan, you. I opened my mouth, but didn't know what to say. At this moment, a fine crack appeared in my heart. Ethan walked up to me, ignoring everyone's gazes, knelt on one knee, took out a velvet box from his pocket, and opened it. Inside lay exactly that star diamond ring I had entrusted to sell. Lynn, this ring was customized for you 6 months ago. I originally planned, on the day our 25-year agreement expired, under that locust tree where we first met, to propose to you. His voice was gentle yet firm, carrying a desperate plea. I know, saying these now might be too late, and might not compensate for the hurt I once caused you. I don't ask for your immediate forgiveness, I only ask you to give me another chance, a chance to pursue you again and make up for it, okay? I looked at the ring, at Ethan kneeling before me with humble and earnest eyes, tears blurring my vision. The grievances, bitterness, self-doubt of the past 3 years intertwined and collided with those deeply buried, never truly extinguished affections, leaving my heart in turmoil. What should I do? That night's sudden confession was like a boulder thrown into my heart lake that had gradually calmed, stirring up towering waves. I didn't agree to Ethan on the spot, nor did I outright refuse. I needed time, needed space, to digest his words, to discern how much was impulse under alcohol's influence, how much was sincere remorse. After the close discussion ended, I left the resort villa early on the pretext of feeling unwell, almost fleeing in disarray. Ethan didn't stop me. Only before I got in the car, he stuffed the velvet box with the diamond ring into my hand, his gaze pained yet firm. Lynn, I won't force you. Keep the ring, no matter what decision you make in the end, it's yours. Just, don't disappear silently again, let me know where you are, okay? I neither nodded nor shook my head, just tightly gripped that box, like holding a hot potato. Back in my small apartment, I locked the door, slid down against the door panel to sit on the ground, and only then dared to open the box. The diamond sparkled with brilliant yet cold luster under the light. The E and L on the inner wall were still clear. I recalled Ethan's expression when mentioning that locked drawer, the gentleness when he mentioned those little notes and the ugly scarf. My heart, as if soaked in warm water, softened bit by bit, yet filled with unease due to uncertainty. In the days after, Ethan indeed kept his promise, not harassing me again. Work contacts remained through emails and company landlines, strictly business, never mentioning personal matters. But he would, when I worked overtime, have his assistant deliver hot late-night snacks under the name of comforting the project team. When the weather turned cold, anonymously send a soft cashmere shawl, with an attached card printed only with "Pay attention to keeping warm." Even, I discovered that the stray cat downstairs in the neighborhood that I often fed suddenly had a warm and pretty cat house and an endless supply of cat food. These silent, cautious cares, like fine rain, silently penetrated the heart wall I had built. I had to admit, Ethan knew me well, knowing what ways could maximally dismantle my defenses. Just as my heart defenses gradually loosened, and I began seriously considering whether to give each other another chance, an uninvited guest came to the door again. This time it was Ethan's mother, the always elegant and luxurious Mrs. Shen, polite yet distant toward me. Mrs. Shen arranged to meet at a high-end members-only tea room, with an elegant environment and curling incense. She sized me up, her gaze sharp, with undisguised scrutiny. Miss Lynn, I heard you've recently had work interactions with Ethan again? Mrs. Shen got straight to the point, her tone flat yet oppressive. I straightened my back, neither humble nor arrogant. Yes, Mrs. Shen, it's normal cooperation at the company level. Normal cooperation? Mrs. Shen chuckled lightly, with some sarcasm. For this normal cooperation of yours, Ethan mobilized connections, forcibly replaced the originally designated advisor, and personally took the field. This doesn't seem like his style. My heart jolted. I didn't know there were such twists in this. Miss Lynn, I'll be straightforward. Mrs. Shen set down her teacup, her gaze becoming serious. Our Shen family has requirements for a daughter-in-law. Ethan will take over the entire Shen group in the future. His wife must be a virtuous helpmate who aids his career. The Su and Shen families are old acquaintances. That child Clara, whether in family background, education, or cultivation, is a match made in heaven with Ethan. My heart sank bit by bit. As expected, still this set. I know you and Ethan have youthful affections. Mrs. Shen's tone softened a bit, yet carried deeper implications, but youthful impulses can't be taken seriously. Ethan now might just be temporarily confused, blinded by past emotions. When he calms down, he will naturally understand what is the best choice for him. She took out a check from her handbag and pushed it in front of me. Here is $5 million, enough for you to live worry-free for the rest of your life. Leave the northern city, find a place to start over. Don't disturb Ethan anymore. Looking at that light yet weighty check, I suddenly smiled. I lifted my head, looking directly at Mrs. Shen, my gaze clear and firm. Mrs. Shen, you may have misunderstood. First, Ethan and I have already broken up. There is no question of who disturbing whom. The current cooperation is purely work. Second, my value doesn't need to be measured by money, nor defined by others. Third, I paused, stating clearly word by word, whether to be with Ethan or not is between him and me. As for whether it's suitable or matching, only he and I are qualified to judge. No need for you to worry. After saying that, I stood up, without glancing at the check, nodded slightly. If there's nothing else, I'll excuse myself first. Walking out of the tea room, the afternoon sunlight was somewhat glaring. I took a deep breath, feeling that long pent-up turbid air in my chest seemed to dissipate a lot. Mrs. Shen's words not only didn't strike me down but were like an alarm bell, waking me up. Why should I live under others' gazes and standards? Why deny my own feelings and choices because of a few words from others? I, Lynn, may have an ordinary family background, but I stand on my own efforts in this city. I have my own dreams and pursuits. My personality and emotions cannot be trampled by anyone with money and status. At this moment, I suddenly understood my feelings for Ethan. I love him, never stopped. Those hurts and doubts existed truly, but Ethan's changes and efforts these months, I also saw them. If because of fear of being hurt again, I choose to avoid and give up, that would be the greatest disrespect to myself and this relationship. What I need to do is not dwell on the past, but see my heart clearly, then bravely face the future. Just as I made up my mind and prepared to talk properly with Ethan, I first received an urgent call from Ethan's assistant. Manager Lynn. Bad news. General Manager Ethan, he had a car accident. When I rushed to the hospital, Ethan had already been sent into the operating room. The assistant waited at the door, face pale, saying that General Manager Ethan, to hurry to see me, was speeding and got hit by a truck running a red light at the intersection. Before getting in the car, General Manager Ethan said he seemed to see Miss Clara going to find you. He was afraid Miss Clara would say something to misunderstand you again, and he must see you immediately to explain clearly. The assistant's voice carried sobs. I leaned against the cold wall, my whole body cold, mind blank. The red light above the operating room glared brightly, like a knife hanging over my heart. Time passed second by second, each second long as a century. I thought of every bit with Ethan, from the ignorant childhood sweethearts, to the hardships of depending on each other in the northern city, to the later estrangement and separation. If Ethan really had any mishap. I dared not think further. So, in the face of life and death, all hesitations, pride, calculations became so insignificant. I just wanted him alive, safe and sound. I don't know how long passed, the operating room door finally opened. The doctor came out, expression grave, the patient lost too much blood, temporarily out of life danger, but still in coma. Whether he can wake up, when he wakes, depends on his willpower and fate. My legs weakened, almost collapsing to the ground. I forced myself up, followed the nurse into the ICU. Ethan lay on the bed, face pale as paper, head wrapped in thick gauze, body inserted with various tubes, fragile as if he would shatter at a touch. I gently held his hand without the cold touch making my heart tremble. Ethan. I choked, tears dripping on his hand back. Wake up, okay? I've forgiven you, I really have. As long as you wake up, we'll start over, I'll never leave you again. I lay on the bedside, sobbing uncontrollably. Calling his name over and over, saying those words long buried in my heart. Perhaps my calls worked, or perhaps it was Ethan's strong will to survive. 3 days later, Ethan's vital signs gradually stabilized, transferred from ICU to a regular ward. Though still in coma, the doctor said the situation was improving. I took long leave from the company, guarding the bedside day and night without rest. I wiped his body, massaged his muscles, read books he used to like to him, chattered about their childhood fun, about the bits of my solo life these months. During this, the Shin family came several times. Mother Shin saw my haggard yet persistent self, her expression complex, ultimately saying nothing, just sighing. Clara came once, put down a fruit basket, looked at Lynn tightly holding Ethan's hand, and left with a dim expression. A week later, one clear morning, sunlight sprinkled into the ward through curtain gaps. I was using a cotton swab dipped in water to moisten Ethan's chapped lips when suddenly I felt his fingers move slightly. I held my breath, staring tightly at his face. Ethan's eyelashes trembled a few times, slowly, difficultly opening his eyes. His gaze was somewhat scattered, after adapting to the light, slowly focused on my face. Weak, yet carrying unmistakably clear gentleness and attachment. He opened his mouth, voice so hoarse it was almost inaudible. Lynn, don't cry. I am fine. My tears burst forth instantly, but they were tears of joy. I nodded vigorously, gripped his hand tightly, and sobbed uncontrollably. Yes. You're awake. You're finally awake. Ethan looked at me, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips, his eyes filled with unwavering determination. This time. I'll never let you go again, no matter what. A month later, Ethan recovered and was discharged. Though he still needed some time to recuperate, there was no major issue. The day after discharge, he pulled me along and flew back to the southern small town where we grew up. Without notifying anyone, they went directly to that crooked neck locust tree carrying their childhood and agreement. The locust tree was sturdier than in memory, with lush branches and leaves. Afternoon sunlight sprinkled mottled spots through gaps, a breeze bringing familiar grassy fragrance. Ethan took out that star diamond ring from his pocket, kneeling on one knee again. This time, no onlookers, only heaven, earth, and this old tree as witnesses. Lynn, he looked up at her, gaze clear and devout, just like that boy back then, though the process was a bit tortuous, and the location might not be romantic enough. But I want to complete my belated proposal here, in our agreed place. Lynn, I love you. From ignorant youth, to stumbling growth, to now clearly seeing my heart's certainty, the one I love has always been only you. In the past, I was a bastard, ignoring your feelings, making you suffer so many grievances. I swear, from now on, in my life, there will only be you. I will use all my remaining time to love you, protect you, make you the happiest woman in the world. Lynn, marry me, okay? I looked at the man kneeling before me, at the undisguised love and tension in his eyes, at the ring shining under the sunlight. The past joys and sorrows flashed in my mind, ultimately turning into this moment's full-hearted softness and firmness. I extended my hand, a smile blooming on my face as brilliant as sunlight, eyes containing happy tears. Okay. The ring slowly slipped onto the ring finger, fitting perfectly. Ethan stood up, hugging me tightly, as if embracing the whole world regained. The sunlight was just right, the years long. Our story, after a big circle, finally returned to the initial starting point, and would head toward a farther future. Later, Ethan sold the company in the northern city, returned to the small town with me, and founded a studio focused on combining traditional culture and modern design. Days passed calmly and fulfillingly. One day while organizing old items, I finally saw that legendary locked drawer. Ethan opened it with the key in front of me. Inside, as he said, it was full of those childish yet heartfelt small objects from me back then, preserved perfectly. At the very bottom, pressed that already yellowed 25-year agreement contract paper. And in the corner of the drawer, there was an even smaller wooden box I had never seen. I opened it curiously. Inside was a simple yet unique platinum plain ring, the inner wall engraved with a small date. That was the second year they came to the northern city, the day Ethan received his first project dividend. In the box, there was also a note, in Ethan's handwriting: "The first sum earned by my own ability, want to buy you a ring. When I earn enough later, change to a bigger one. Lynn, wait for me." Holding that plain ring, tears streamed down my face. So, when I didn't know, he had already planned her into his future. Ethan embraced me from behind, chin resting on her hair top, voice gentle: "Fortunately, in the end, the one on your hand is the star." But this one was all I had then. I turned around, tiptoed, actively kissed his lips. Silly, for me, this is the best. Outside the window, sunlight bright, years peaceful. Our love, after winds and rains, finally saw the rainbow. And the future, there is still a very long road to walk together.